Welcome back. We got Brett Baer back for you. Here he is continuing our series on toxic sites in Missouri.
Thanks, Jillian. Radioactive materials that date back to the Manhattan Project have been found at several sites in St. Louis. Tonight, we look at recently uncovered documents and how much officials knew about the possibility of contamination there.
This was the best kept secret of St. Louis.
Since founding their group STL Moms, Karen Nickel and Dawn Chapman have worked to put together the story of how toxic waste contaminated their neighborhood.
Over the years, we had heard bits and pieces of the story and what we thought was the story.
We've been looking into this. There are thousands of documents that show the government knew of the dangers of that waste. When did the public start to find out about that?
Well, I think as early as the 1960s, you had the public beginning to get some sense of it, but really it wasn't until the 80s and the 90s that the full scope of this began to come into view. But Brett, as recently as last year, we got a new cache of documents that showed the full extent of the government's knowledge. And the government knew years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, that they had poisoned the creek.
The two moms began sorting through thousands of documents in 2020.
Right away, we were going, oh my God, this is so different than what we thought.
The evidence was there, the facts were there, and it told the story from beginning to end.
St. Louis was key in producing chemicals for nuclear weapons throughout the 1940s and 50s.
In fact, St. Louis was a uranium processing site. So was Kentucky, so was Tennessee. That the extent of the testing that was done in the West, the American West, was far greater than we knew.
The U.S. government hired Mallinckrodt Chemical Works to process uranium at its plant in St. Louis amid the effort to build the atomic bomb. The uranium was often sent to a lab in Chicago and helped create the first sustained nuclear chain reaction.
It's a powerful energy.
After the uranium processing facility in St. Louis during the Manhattan Project era shut down, the government didn't dispose of the waste properly or really at all.
Federal officials bought land near the St. Louis airport to store the byproduct.
Right away, you could see that the government knew how dangerous this waste was.
In an internal memo from 1949, Mallinckrodt discussed health and safety concerns surrounding the disintegrating K-65 drums at the airport that were left open to the elements.
Piles of waste, but barrels of waste were sitting at the airport site.
The document includes discussions to move the waste and recognized the current location as a severe problem. It also considered the possibility of stream pollution in nearby Coldwater Creek.
They knew it was probably leaking into the creek, but they didn't know how much.
Coldwater Creek originates south of the St. Louis airport. It stretches 14 miles and flows into the Missouri River. High water and threatening floods are an annual occurrence along the creek.
Wind and rain and also flooding events took some of those contaminants. They were carried down the stream in the sediment and then deposited during flooding events and also just during the normal flow.
The Mallinckrodt memo goes on to determine the health hazard for workers was more immediate than the pollution in Coldwater Creek.
They were so toxic that they were told, do not touch those. Just let them go ahead and leak into the creek. And this was before homes were built. And lo and behold, in the 50s, late 50s and 60s, homes were being built on top of this.
Throughout the 1960s and 70s, the waste was moved to a different location near the airport and Coldwater Creek, and again, left out in the open.
The controls back in the day were surely not what they are now. That's why we're in the current situation.
So how difficult is it to clean that up?
Well, not nearly as difficult as the government's made it. For years, the people of St. Louis were told, don't worry, there's no significant radiation, or they were told, hey, we've cleaned it all up. In fact, those things were not true.
According to a 1977 Tennessee Oak Ridge National Laboratory report, scientists conducted surface soil sampling at the airport storage site and Coldwater Creek.
It was taking years to do testing and really get the scope and magnitude of how contaminated North County is.
Samples from drainage ditches, which carry runoff water into the creek, showed average radiation levels were almost 5 times higher than usual.
We haven't seen that level at these sites since I've been here, for sure.
The waste was moved once again in the 1970s to the West Lake landfill, a location near the neighborhood where Karen, Dawn, and thousands of other residents would eventually call home.
It is not possible in these United States of America to purchase a home next to a site that has Manhattan Project radioactive waste just sitting out for decades.
There are dozens and dozens and dozens of Missouri lawmakers who have been in office for these decades. Why are you the first that's raising the alarm bell here?
I wish I had a good answer to that question, but here's the truth, is that the time to act is now. I mean, really, the people of Missouri, this should have been done 50 years ago.
15 years ago, most of the public was unaware that Coldwater Creek and the West Lake landfill were contaminated with radioactive wastes. While more has come to light about those sites, advocates are still facing hurdles in getting them cleaned up. Take a look at that next time. We'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Brett.